Good evening. It's 8:30 p.m. about here in Egypt where I'm living. My name is Brett Warshawski, and I am super honored to be here guest emceeing for Vested Summit 2021. This is the world's largest conscious tech summit, and we're excited to be here. We've had several discussions in the last couple hours, and right now, in a minute, we're going to have a panel discussion on Middle East ecosystem enablers. So there's four main categories or themes, excuse me, for the summit: technology, investment, success stories, global ecosystem, and consciousness. So we just saw two panels about investment success, which is sort of the micro scale of people's real experiences in getting their startups going from the investor side and the investee side. And then we have an overall theme this year at the summit, which is the investment edition, the harvest, the theme of harvest. What have the last 10 years been like here in the Middle East, especially with bringing capital in and getting startups going and innovations happening? And what do the next 10 years look like based on that? So I ended the last session saying it's amazing to realize that technology also extends to social technologies and spiritual technologies and emotional technologies. So re-understanding ecosystems and investment in how we work together as a human family is really important. So I'm really excited to see this conversation. I'm just going to introduce our speakers and our moderator. And once again, thank Vested Summit for giving me the honor to just have a short little role here. And thank everyone behind the scenes as well, of course, for helping get all this stuff happening with all the videos. It's really important. So without further ado, we have four speakers tonight on this Middle East Ecosystem Enablers panel. Abdelhameed Sharara, the founder and CEO of RiseUp. Tarek Fouad, head of growth at Shorooq Partners. Tarek Elkady, founder and chairman at Med Angels. And Salma Hariry.
Tarek is not joining us. The other Tarek.
I'm sorry. Yep. And you can help me out when you get on. Salma is here, who is the founder and CEO of aleUp Ventures, and the moderator is Sophia Korayim, the co-founder and CEO of Weelo. So over to you guys. Everyone's looking forward to hearing about your perspectives.
Oh, thanks, Brett. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And yes, my name is Sophia Korayim, and I when Salma invited me to come and moderate this panel, I was so excited when it said, reverse enablers for the startup ecosystem. And I think this is a discussion that we really need to, a dialogue that needs to get started. And I know, RiseUp, Shorooq Partners, aleUp Ventures, you guys are the pillars of what the startup ecosystem is. So I think it's important that, let's lay the groundwork of, we all know what a startup ecosystem is, right? Investors, incubators, accelerators, mentors, government bodies. Fine. I think the big question is, what is this ecosystem doing right? And what is it doing wrong? And if you had a reset button, how would you be able to reset this ecosystem? I think that's really the kind of discussion I want to talk, just like what Brett said about, where we were and where we're going. I think it's important that we have to start to think about innovation from the startup enabler side. So I think I'd like to ask Abdelhameed first, RiseUp, as kind of everything, comes out from RiseUp. So what are your opinions on, what is the ecosystem doing right?
Thank you so much for Sophie for the amazing introduction, and for Brett and Salma and Tarek. I think on what we're doing right as an ecosystem collectively, there's this unique part about the MENA region and also Africa, that a lot of the founders and the people who are behind the organizations supporting startups in this ecosystem have some sort of underlying purpose. They're all into this because they don't just believe that of the value that startups can bring and the job creation, all that part that is clear, but they're into building better lives for people. They're into building better human experiences. They're into solving problems, into solving challenges that face the society. So I think this importance of purpose is a common denominator. And the other very important part is what we're doing right now. People could think, for instance, Vested and RiseUp and and technique could be like, or any other event that is in the region could be competing or some sorts. In fact, in reality, we're all friends. We're all collaborating a lot in terms of how to support startups in the region. So I think this sense of collaboration and partnership is also a very strong differentiator on what we're doing right.
Mm-hmm. But Tarek, what do you think? What do you think that? What are we doing right? I mean, I think it's important that we identify our strengths as an ecosystem, right? What in your opinion are we doing right?
True. I think there's a lot of things that we're doing right. I think we are building, we're laying down the grounds for new fund managers to come in, for example. We're laying down the foundation for talent to stay, right? Not only that we've identified that we need to build talent, but we also identified ways to retain talent. And you can see that in a lot of the government regulations, recent ones that came out, to make sure that people not only find a great place to work, but to also live and play, right? This is so important for building communities, because at the end, that's really what an ecosystem is. It's a community that thrives on building itself, and the more it builds, the more the more equity you build, and therefore it becomes it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, right? But you need to start somewhere, and I think governments in the Middle East have done a tremendous job in kind of enticing entrepreneurship, encouraging founders to take risks. And that could, we've seen that by reducing the costs of opening business, making sure that those who fail could actually fail with a safety net somehow, right? So then they can rise up again. Literally, there's no pun intended there, Sharara, but it is, right? You rise up again. And that is, I believe we're doing really, really well.
I agree with you. I think it's, we've definitely built a community. I think, we've built a reputation. We've built that commonality and that language between us. But the question is that enough? And I'd like to ask Salma, I mean, is it enough that, we're just doing it right? In ecosystem or startups in general, we all rely on startups for innovation. And I think what the challenge has been is that we need to rely on the startup enablers to be innovative. So Salma, I want to ask you, what are we doing wrong?
Thank you, Sophie, for pausing this. I think, and I do agree with Sharara and Tarek that the thing that we're getting right is the mission-driven, purposeful startups and founders. This is what moved us. This is what makes me wake up every day and feel very empowered and inspired to want to help those awesome people that are actually bringing about true innovations of real problems that we all face, and their extreme passion towards doing that is what really fuels us to keep going, even in the most challenging of places. I would say the Middle East isn't the easiest when it comes to infrastructure. Every country feels like a whole different we try to say it's the Middle East region, but actually it is really a country by country per se. When it comes to the ecosystems and the startups, and it is a whole beast of a region. So I applaud you for the work you're doing. But I mean, living in Silicon Valley and coming from Silicon Valley, I can tell you there's so many things that we're not doing right. And the first thing is I opened the summit saying we need to bring more speed to market because, a few years ago, I was just walking down the streets in LA, actually, which is not the top at that time destination for startups. But I saw electric scooters everywhere. And this was, mind you, back in 2014 or something, not a while ago. and I saw it, and it had invaded, everywhere. It's like, and it wasn't even in San Francisco. It was just in LA. And I was like, what are these things that are like all over the place, and I had to Google it. It was called Bird, and I go online and I realized this is a company that started 1 year ago, and it already managed to raise $250 million. I was like, oh my God, this is not even a startup. I mean, today Bird has raised more than $1 billion. But definitely, I mean, this is the kind of thing when we talk about ecosystems that, like, you know, we can really expect to see things that are working, and working meaning volume, value, purpose. So the purpose exists, the market exists, but it is really all in the collaborations between us all, and then also one player handing off to the other. It's like, you know, and that's why it's called an ecosystem, because basically it's a circular kind of like flow of I would say it's a machine of startups. If that machine works right, it should actually idea to exit or IPO, idea to exit or IPO, and this cycle should actually get faster and faster, and with more and more trickle down into more founders, more startups, so we can see even a whole movement of that, and that is something I think that we got right. I think everyone now dreams of starting a startup. Thanks to RiseUp a few years ago, no one knew what a startup is, to be honest. Didn't even, the term entrepreneurship was a term that was completely foreign. Like when I used to say I work in the entrepreneurship and startup scene, people looked at me, even people my age were like, what are you talking about? But now it is common language, and it is something that, you know, we is commonly known. University students are aspiring to start businesses. Corporate people that have you know, 15-20 year careers are investing and also starting businesses. So it's a whole movement that's really on its way, but there's just a lot to, it's just starting. So there's much more to do.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it to it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tarek.
No, Sophia, I think so. I totally agree with Salma that there's a lot to be done, and I'll tell you one thing just to add on what we are doing wrong. Right, I'm blessed to have had worked in entrepreneurship from the startup side and from the government side, and now from the investment side, and I can tell you this across the board, there is lack of patience. I think people need to understand that you can't build ecosystem overnight, and unfortunately, we are doing ourselves a kind of disfavor by kind of comparing ourselves with others that have been up and running for 100 years before us. Right? It's great to aspire. It's great to go there. And it's great to have that goal, but we need to also understand that the ecosystem just started, right? And putting pressure won't necessarily change things. It actually might break things much quicker. And if that's something that is great and we'll learn from it, is a question mark, right? Because chances are you might break things to the point where people don't necessarily go back to entrepreneurship. So it's important to kind of build it on foundations, but in the same time give everybody the time to appreciate the process. It's a process to get there, right? And you know, just celebrate more, right? Celebrate that we have now the likes of Korayim and Soups, and we'll see more, like the like of Swivels. And to tell you the truth, I don't think it's a numbers game. I think it's a quality game, right? I think you know, with Korayim, for example, you just need another company like Korayim that created 20 other companies from its exit, right? And it's that multiplier effect, right? So it's a matter of finding, you know, 20, 30 more of these Karims to create that multiplier effect on the ecosystem. But we don't necessarily need millions of them, right? Otherwise, there won't be a meaning for what a unicorn is.
Yeah, well,
So yeah, I thought just to add this.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think building on what you just said, I think it's important when you said that we have to find that talent pool, that funnel, and that's coming from these companies like RiseUp. You know, Abdelhameed, and what he's doing is he's creating that talent pool of entrepreneurs, of future entrepreneurs. And but Abdelhameed, I want to ask you, how, you know, the what ignites growth? What are the characteristics, or what is RiseUp doing that is actually trying to make a difference to, you know, to try to pinpoint the right entrepreneurs to get into the ecosystem? Is there a science behind it? Is it done? How are you doing it? And what type of responsibility do you have to kind of shape the future of entrepreneurship in this region?
That's a great question. Thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Tara and Salma, for your kind and great words as well. I think it's all what Tara and Salma said. It's a collaborative effort, and the our hardest mission is, as RiseUp, how can we still grow, but yet stay as a platform or a community. And this entails, as Salma mentioned, the cycle part. Really making sure that we are not stepping toes on other people's roles and responsibilities in the ecosystem, and making and maintaining us in the positioning of a platform or a community. Even though if we at any point launch a co-investment fund or anything like that, just making sure that within the DNA of our platform, we stay as a community, we stay connected, we work a lot with all the partners this year. I think we had over 100 entities collaborating to make the event happen. So this is the DNA that the three of us, I think, are agreeing upon, and the works. Even when Tarek was at Hub 71, we collaborated without even, I've never met Tarek physically, ever, but we had an MOU together, and there was trust, and there was a lot of work. And Salma was, since the day one when she came back in Pitney's part, they were actually one of the very first sponsors of RiseUp 13, and this stays, and we're here 21. It's a very, very, I think the power of community is what makes this movement meaningful. So I think that's the recipe as you asked for. And on the growth level, big part of it is really not claiming other people's success, making sure the stars are the startups themselves, the entrepreneurs themselves, the investors behind them, the entities that are backing them, and not making we don't come and claim anything, because in reality we're just a catalyst, not an actor in that space. That's from RiseUp side. I think from the ecosystem, I love the multiplier effect example that Tarek mentioned as well. I think Swivel is one of those companies that came out of Kareem, and now both ex-co-founders of Swivel have two very unique startups, one in the fintech space and the other one in the supply chain, and both are, I think, exceeding the $200 million valuation already. So this multiplier effect will, the snowball has already moved, I think, and it's being created. That's why I think it will take its organic shape. The other part that is very, very important is the market that we have. I think Dubai, Riyadh, Amman, Beirut, Cairo is a very unique space. Of course, amazing stuff happening in Tunisia and Morocco and Sudan and the rest of the region. But this very connected art as a marketplace is quite unique, and you find a lot of companies that were able to capitalize on accessing investment in Saudi, getting proper advisors and global proper access to the market, to Dubai, and very unique talents from Amman, Beirut, or Cairo. Stuff like that. That kind of mix is a very unique mix in the region as well.
No, I definitely agree with you, and I think it's important that we all focus on this concept of growth, and it is important that we all are, with it, are working as independent silos, yet working as a community as well. But I still think that there's an issue that, there's like an elephant in the room that nobody's really talking about. It's about, we all want growth, we all want to move slowly, but nobody's actually talking about how can we create this growth? How can we do it? I mean, I think the issue is really about, we need to look at ourselves and say, you know what, is this market size big enough? Is it big enough? Do our entrepreneurs who are in this ecosystem, do they feel that they can only work in this region? Do they have a global mindset? Do they think of going outside of the region? Is this something that are we interested in? Is this something that we even want to, engage? Because this is how the companies grow. That's really what growth is. Growth is scaling out, not scaling up. So I think the question is, how are we scaling out? Mm-hmm. Salma, what do you think?
I think excellent question, Sophie. It is really very timely as well. I mean, especially with COVID, and when you look at our problems, we tend to think of the problems that are in the region as very unique set of problems, and maybe they do not exist elsewhere. But to the contrary of that, actually, this is why we have a global exposure track at Vested Summit, to really shed light on what's happening in other places, to just help people realize, the entrepreneurs and the ecosystem realize slowly and slowly that actually these problems are not unique to the region. They exist elsewhere in other emerging markets, and they need to look at synergies that could be also built with other VCs or other entities that could help scale this growth fast enough beyond the region. I think that definitely today the founders do have the ambition. They have seen the Elon Musks of the world and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, and it is and we do have the Swivels and the Karims now for people to inspire from local and regional players and successes. But it really is a question of, what does it take to actually build those giants and grow fast, and how can we better equip the entrepreneurs today to build that, can we actually,
that's the question,
and can we actually rely on other ecosystems to also guide us through the answers by involving other players from other markets in this ecosystem, and not having it only I sometimes feel like the UAE is getting it right in all the right ways when it comes to government, for example, because they don't shy away from actually hiring foreigners in the government. It's full of international people. It's, you are skilled, you are competent, come here, please help me play this, and you get very well compensated, you're welcomed, you feel very, very much home, and we get to build together. And I think this is the mindset that also needs to change across the Middle East, which is basically, if I'm from Egypt, I need to only be hiring Egyptians. Why the hell? Excuse me, that's great. I mean, we do have an unemployment issue, but don't come to me complaining that I can't find talent in the market. There's a global market that exists. And this is also part of the barriers to entry that, some of the entrepreneurs today are operating through. So it is more of a question. I think it's not, I don't have a full answer, but definitely engaging more global players into local and regional ecosystems is one of those answers.
That's Tarek, thank you, Salma. Tarek, I wanted to follow up that question with you. What do you, in your opinion, what is the ecosystem, or what are the enablers doing to help these founders become more globally minded? I mean, maybe they're doing things that we don't know. Maybe even the startup founders don't know. Each founder is part of either an accelerator or a startup or a VC, and they're working with them as independent relationships, right? Maybe we don't even know what they're doing. I mean, what are they doing, for example? Yeah. Can you give us some examples of what?
So definitely, ecosystem enablers in the word, right? They enable the ecosystem. They are the fabric that connects different different stakeholders to each other. And that's what an ecosystem enabler is. So at my work, for example, at Hubs Everyone, and prior to that in Sharara, we were focused on getting founders exposed. There is so much to learn from by kind of rubbing shoulders with other founders coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, solving problems very differently, and exposed to different problems, and therefore they found other solutions to kind of tap into. And that kind of exposure allows learning by osmosis, in a sense, right? You kind of work together, you share ideas, and that has been, I believe it happens in Egypt, it happens in UAE, it is happening in KSA, and it's just a matter of getting more of these exposure opportunities out there, that would allow this ecosystem to flourish, and for founders to be inspired from others, right? To understand that, wow, I don't need to be thinking about another e-commerce app when the founder next door is working on, let's say, the next AI for automotive industry, right? By the nature of competition, everybody will kind of push their mental limits and ideas, just by being around each other. But I think, coming back to a very important question that you asked, is like, how do we get founders to think global? How do we get them to scale out? And that is, and to tell you the truth, it's unfair to put that pressure on the founders or on the ecosystem enablers of each country alone, because uh, as much as MENA region is amazing as a market, we are blessed with a lot of other challenges, and that is, we have very different legal structures everywhere, right? It's not like the US, where it's one huge market with one legal structure. China, and obviously Salma can elaborate on this, China, India, Pakistan, right? All of these are huge markets that speak one language, speak one legal system. And to scale within MENA, you need uh, 30 different legal different legal entities working with you just to kind of set you up there. And that, the proof is in the pudding. No international company will come thinking, I'll be able to do that. They come to acquire, which is great news to startups. If startups can crack the code of scaling within the region, all they need to do is just play the game right and actually be sustainable companies. And that is far more important than just scaling out simply. It's scaling out sustainably. More and more, we want companies that focus on unit economics. This Uber model is gone, right? That is I don't believe that is sustainable, and that doesn't necessarily create enough value to stakeholders. The value of the company needs to also be tagged to the value it brings to stakeholders, and therefore I encourage founders to think, yes, scale out within the region and grow by utilizing the stakeholders that are available. We need to do that job as well, to kind of be able to unify the different countries together under one roof somehow. Governments need to step in to facilitate this, right? And if we can do that, sustainability becomes the key here to grow.
No, valid point. I mean, that's very important when especially when you're mentioning about getting involved with the networks and introducing our founders to global networks. That's why I wanted to ask Abdelhameed, how is how what is the importance of having and building these networks on the global scale or on the global scene? I mean, should we be focusing on that now or should we not? And who in the ecosystem is the strongest in doing this? Because I think we need to start to enable and empower our ecosystem here who do have a global footprint, so we can get founders in front of the right people at the right time. So, I mean, I know that RiseUp is the core of what networking is all about. So, how do you feel that, networking plays an important role, and can that facilitate growth?
I really think that networking is crucial. It's crucial to survive in the 21st century if you're doing business, if you're even in normal life, and people are realizing the more and more the value of knowing others and having fruitful partnerships and fruitful uh, collaborations and networking. The key here and what you've mentioned is the right mix.
Yeah.
I'm I think every business is unique towards which markets they need to scale in. For instance, a company like Fouad in Egypt, which is now a unicorn and the exit, it was a corporate spinoff, and then got acquired, and then raised a lot of funding from private equities, and then went into the public market, and now they're scaling into Africa, which is a natural extension because the challenges that Egypt is facing onto that same level is similar in Africa. For instance, while Saudi, I don't think would have a space in Dubai or in Saudi because those markets, in terms of what they offer, are far more valuable and advanced. The opposite is, when it comes to a luxury service, and this is why I think the MENA region has a very unique positioning to extend on both Africa and then Southeast Asia, which is a huge markets. If you add them, those are a couple of billion people, and then that part of having international mindset is literally about two things. One is the mindset itself, so understanding that, as you mentioned, there are a lot of problems that are similar elsewhere that they've solved already, but also being skeptical and critical towards how they were solved, because maybe the solution of the same problem in Egypt is far more different than London, or Cairo different than London or Barcelona. But at the same time, the value of people who've done this elsewhere is still very high, be it as mentors or investors or acquaintances. I think in the 21st century, the right terminology right now is thinking global, which is having this global mindset whilst solving for local solutions and localizing your efforts as well to maintain focus, but also not to be confused, because you can easily get lost in the realms of the digital world and feel like that you can solve anything at any point, which is not true, because you need this dual mindset while solving challenges. The same for growth, of course, right? Because you need those networks for growth. You need those networks for understanding the markets. And you'll find Kareem, for instance, a big part of why they were acquired is they actually acquired Hadir Shalabi's startup, Taxi Sahel, in the North Coast, where she was running, dozen of cars to help people drive around the North Coast in summer. And then she became the GM of Kareem Egypt, and that was the second market ever, second largest market. And then Kareem was Hadir then became the chief innovation officer, or like the entrepreneur residence inside the company, and helped them, start new things. And when both met for the first time, I think Uber had also that very local thinking of hiring Tino Wekid and Noor Ahmedin, that were like local champions in Egypt that were able to scale elsewhere as well. So this combination of global and local, I think, is what the world needs at this point, and what the region needs at this point, and it's working. And we've seen it work a lot of time.
Oh, I love it. I think that term, what would you call it, global? So I guess global serves all investors. It serves entrepreneurs. It serves the ecosystem at large. And I think You know, I think it's important that, building on what you said, Abdelhameed, I think it's important that we start, this thinking globally. I think that we need to identify where can we go? Is it just, I know that we keep talking about this region in the Middle East, but there's still a thought that we need to be looking at going to opening up in New York, in London, in Beijing, in Seattle, in Singapore, in Sydney. Why is that not part of the dialogue? Why are they not areas where we are telling our founders, you know what, find a partner there, find a customer there? I mean, the formula is pretty simple, right? I mean, you get an investment, you get a big customer or some revenue source, you find partners that enable you to, with your main competencies, and then you discover collaborations, right? The question is, why are we not doing it abroad? So, in your opinion, Tarek, let me ask you, with your startups in your portfolio, have any of them gone out to, Singapore, Sydney, Chicago's, the
No, so
Amsterdams?
no, so mainly the startups are expanding regionally. Um, and so at least from our own investments, but that doesn't mean that there weren't success stories from the region that went global, right?
Mhm.
So you have Finabler, for example, that did go to the London Exchange Stock Exchange, right? And was listed there. There was I would say there's at least two or three that IPO'd in London Stock Exchange. There aren't many, and they weren't your typical also startup route, right? They were probably corporate spin-offs, and that's why the media didn't necessarily give it much of attention. But there are stories from the Middle East that did go out abroad. We still need to see more of them.
Mhm.
And I believe it really depends on what problem this startup is. I am against kind of pushing everybody to think the only route to go and exit is to actually go and expand outside. And by outside, we mean US and China
Mm.
and maybe Southeast Asia. It doesn't have to be. It's about playing smart. It's playing your cards. It's solving problems that are need to be solved, right? That's really what we need to focus on.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Selma, I think we should leave it, with you, and ask you about, what are the next steps? Where are we going with this ecosystem, or where should we going in the next 10 years? What, as Brett mentioned at the beginning, where should we be going?
I think that the world is really moving, especially thankfully to COVID, into more SDG focused world. Everyone's really looking at the planet, the whole planet. I mean, yesterday someone said they even call it the Planet Fund now.
Mhm.
So there are planet funds that are emerging in different parts of the world, and this is really the opportunity for emerging markets where cross-border deals can be a reality, because now the Western world has really started looking at the Middle East and Africa for solutions, because most of these sustainable development goals as or problems are problems that are mainly in the Middle East and Africa and emerging markets. So it's really um, a question of uh, do we have access to the entities that are working on that? Do we foster collaborations for that? Do we get to build a future together? Rather than, because if we only try to attract the attention of VCs that only care about ROI, that only care about commercialization and super futuristic stuff, we'll end up dragging ourselves down a rabbit hole that we don't even need, to be honest.
True.
So it is local. I agree with Abdelhameed Sharara 100%. Global mindset, but local, solve local, because these are, and we do have a role to play in the global economy. and the fabric of what the new economy is going to be looking like. We just tend to be too bubbled in our world because our problems are too humongous that they need superheroes to be solving and addressing them. And the superheroes are here. They're in this room. They're within the audience. They're listening everywhere, and it's just a question of empowering more and more of those every day.
Yep, I agree. It begins with us. It's the dialogue, it's the conversations, it's the discussions, and it's working together as a uniform team, to be aligned with the global vision. So, thank you very much, Brett.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, everyone, for a super important conversation. I'm going to keep banging my drum. I'm just so excited to have been invited to witness this and just have a little role in Invested Summit. Because, in the talk you said we're kind of just at the beginning, yeah? But it's a tipping point. But I know I started my work in the space of spirit-motivated socio-technologies like 10 years ago, and this was not possible. We are at a tipping point. Yes, it's just the beginning, but it's very exciting. And you hear words like community and synergy. And again, we're in the theme of global ecosystems right now, this one being Middle Eastern global ecosystem enablers. So to hear movers and shakers and people with impact and influence and purpose really tuning into that, it's an ecosystem, it's a planet. It's really wonderful. So Sophia, Abdelhameed, Salma, Tarek, thank you so much again also for bringing the collective intelligence. That is what the community does. We bring the collective intelligence to each other. This is a live hackathon for the ecosystem itself. So thank you so much. It was really wonderful. And
thank you so much.
We hope everyone
stays
on for the next couple hours. We've got a couple more panels.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sharara. Thank you, Tarek. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Salma.
Thank you, Brett.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Brett. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.